I'd like to call to order the Kearney County Planning Commission meeting for Monday, November 3rd. Before we get started, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to allow us to have a new secretary. Do I hear a second on that motion?
I second that.
We need to hopefully get Elise to do it. But for now, we need to amend the minutes and, amend the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Perfect, it is unanimous. I'd also like to make a motion, if you would be willing to do it, Elise, that Elise Dunaway becomes our secretary.
Of course.
Do I hear a second on that? We have a first and a second. All those in favor of Elise being secretary signify by saying aye.
Unanimous.
Perfect, thank you. Now, if we could get an invocation, Mr. Nix, can I get
Sir, pray with me if you will. Heavenly Father, we ask that you please watch over this committee and the planning staff and guide us to wise and safety-conscious decisions in support of the public. We also ask that you watch over the county law enforcement, first responders, and other county workers as they perform their duties, that they may return home safely to their families after every shift. We ask that you please watch over the county and state leaders as they work to make the county and state a better place to live each day. In His name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And Mr. Henry, could I get you to start us with the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, we should have the minutes here from our October 20th meeting. If we've had a chance to review those, can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
And a second?
I second.
So Jake seconded the,
Jake, Kane, Joe, one of them.
we have a first and a second. Are there any changes to the minutes? If not, all those in favor of minutes approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
All right, we don't have anyone signed up for non-agenda items. So do we have any commission member comments?
I'd just like to thank Mickey for all his hard work and
Absolutely.
working these ordinances up for us to review. I appreciate it. I know the public appreciates it.
I'd like to say the same thing. You've done an amazing job of putting this stuff together all these weeks and months. And for those who may not be aware, I had asked Mickey, and since planning staff was running so thin and tight the last few weeks, for him to come and rewrite these one more time with the yellow highlights and the yellow notifications there. So hopefully we can run through this and know exactly what we're having to deal with tonight, and hopefully maybe even making a vote to ask that this be packaged up to get to council. So thank you, yes.
It's been an adventure, that's for sure.
Any other any other commission member comments? All right. I do want to say one other thing. You are in the position of handling planning staff at the moment. Ed Habig is no longer here, and so if people do need anything, it's Elise that, Ms. Dunaway, that's handling everything, so.
Yes, sir.
Any staff comments?
Yes, sir.
All right. We are going on to item 8 then, which is the continued discussion here on chapter 26 and chapter 32. I know eventually that we will be getting with chapter 38, but I think that deals so much with zoning that may be a many months process in and of itself, just to make sure that not only are we dealing with corrections, but I suspect it's going to bring up new information and things like that as well. So I'd like to get this foundation set and sent to council before we start on that, if everyone is kind of looking in that same direction. At least that's my hope. But as we start out, we'll start with public comments, and Mr. Markovich is up first.
y'all. For the record, my name is Tom Markovich. Given the discussion that ensued last meeting about private drives and private roads and some of the language that is developed in there, it really kind of brings to thought whether there needs to be anything beyond requiring the state fire marshal to sign off on private roads, period. The situation of having a private drive that is less than, that is 10 lots or less, you could have 10 lots or less that are, and the lots be 4.99 acres each. The possibility being that it could all be subdivided, and then none of this stuff means anything when it comes to the private road, period. And so my thought is, walking down a road, going down a place that it's very difficult to even anticipate where a private drive might become a private road. And to me, the simpler thing is just to say, as long as it meets the state fire marshal's requirements for a private drive or a private road, regardless of how many lots are on it, that's all that's necessary, because you can't anticipate all these different situations that might arise. And another one being, there's another thing in 26 that talks about cul-de-sacs, and you can't have more than 100 lots on a cul-de-sac. Well, that thing can only really pertain to a public road, period. It doesn't say that, but that's the only way it could be applied. And so this whole idea of trying to regulate private drives and private roads, to me, is an effort that is, I don't know how you ever get to the bottom of it. So my recommendation would be that y'all consider the idea that as long as that private road or private drive meets the state fire marshal's requirements, and it does have to be, it has to be put on the plat. The plat has to be stamped that it's private, period. And that's it. I do, it's too extensive to try and go into tonight, but there are some questions that I have about stormwater that are in the other part, and with subdivisions. And stormwater is largely a mechanism of the state, period. Aside from, and I mean, there's specific laws. I mean, I can't collect my stormwater and force it onto somebody else's property. But if it's a natural flow, it's the natural flow, period. And so there's a whole lot of stuff in here about stormwater that I really question whether any of it's truly legal. And I know it's been there for a long time, but that doesn't mean that it's right. It just means it's there. And so that's all I've got on it for right now. I would have to study it for a very long time and to come up with some real hardcore suggestions. But stormwater, except for what's actually platted for Oconee County on the actual stormwater maps. Now, there is specific stormwater plats that show where there is floodplain management required. Besides that, really, everything else is within the state's control, not local. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. If I understand correct, Mr. Haney, you have taken 26 and 32 and made everything yellow highlight that we have voted to approve, and everything that is yellow highlight with red strike throughs is everything that we have previously voted to remove.
That's correct.
But it looks like there's some additional things in blue, and I'm guessing that's what you're wanting to talk to us about this evening.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Those are just items of concern. So one of them deals with the conversation we left off with what documentation should go on the plat. And after I got in the vehicle and started going down the road, I said, it makes sense what Mr. Root had given us to go on that plat. And it really cleans up all the county's plats, because if it does not have this on it, then it's not been certified as a road that's been built by those standards, and it would have to be evaluated. So going forward, only the roads that have been built to the Oconee County Public Road Standards would have this documentation in blue. And I should have used white lettering like I was told to do, but I did not. Hopefully y'all can read it. But I think this will clean all of that up. So instead of having some plats that don't have anything, some plats that have, it was made to, and then some stating that they're strictly private, this just takes care of all the ones that are made to the public road system.
And Mr. Root, for your point, we're looking under the key points of discussion cover page, and it was referring to the section 32.223, where plats in the past had something that said, this is private and shall never be turned over to the public. And now we're trying to incorporate something that says, as you know, roads and subdivisions that are trying to be turned over to the public, but the developer's having to say that it's not. And you had written some wording there. One, I want to ask you, Mr. Root, if this is still, you kind of stand by this, that this is the best way to do it. And then my second part of that question is, does there need to be something for people who simply have private roads or private drives or something of that nature to identify on a survey that this in fact never is to be turned over? And I'll give you the floor.
Yes, absolutely. I think we'll go into the key points of discussion. So references to 26.2B12, and it says 26.2B10, but I think that's C10, so those are private drives and private roads. Those areas also have this nomenclature about these are private, they're never going to be accepted. I think that's good and should say there because it's under the private roads and drive section. 32.223C migrated that language over and gave it as the only option. Listening to your last meeting, I think you were looking for an either or. And I do think the language in blue is good for the or. I think that the applicant should have it. If it's going to be private roads, the language that exists or some close variant of it should be on there. If it's going to remain private, if they're building them to become public, then the blue language should be on there. So I think the way y'all teed it up last time is an either or within chapter 32 at least is a good approach. If that's what you're saying, for us, can we sign off on? Yeah.
So one will have the existing private drive language, and then this would be an optional private drive language, and the developer, when submitting a survey, is to choose which one of those they're going with?
Correct. And this one, the language of blue, grew out of a situation where it was somebody, it was a final plat, but it's going to be completed via security. So they put up security, they're going to still sell the lots, build out the infrastructure because it was secured with a bond. Nonetheless, they needed the language on the plat. They're building the roads according to the county standards. The only option that Fannin gave to them and had at the time was, hey, these are private roads. Well, that wasn't what they were doing. They're building them to become public. They just weren't done. So we came up with this language in blue. It works then. I think it works going forward as an alternate for folks in that situation.
Okay. If we make a motion to that effect, will you know what that means when it comes to drafting this for council?
I sure will. And to restate it, I believe the language in 26-2B12 and 26-2C10 is accurate, as those deal with private roads and drives specifically. And then adding the option now in blue to 32-223. So we have nomenclature for language that's on private road plats and roads that are going to become public as an option is accurate, yes.
So I've got a question, Mr. Reed. Why
Yes, sir.
would you not allow for this language to also be used in 2B12 and 2C10?
Well, because those are under the private drive and private road standards. So what we're saying here is the road rights of way shown have been constructed pursuant to the plan to request future acceptance into the public road system. I think if you wanted to have it in 26-212, I would leave the language that's in there and then say you could put an alternatively, if the applicant wants to, build these from public road standards, this language would apply. You could slip it in there, just making it clear because it's under the private section. I don't think it's necessary, but there's no reason not to put in these 7 lines of text and make it clear.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that was my concern because the developer may build it to the road standards, even though it's a private drive or private road, but want to document it as such because they went through all the preliminary inspections to verify that it is built to the Oconee County Public Road Standards.
yeah, I think that makes good sense. And so in the 26 sections, 12 and 10, we'll just have language that's in there and then a little lead in, just an alternatively, if it's being built to public standards, this language applies. So yeah, we can put it all 3 areas.
Okay. And I'd like to make a motion based on what Mr. Root had said there, that there's that either or for all 3 of those sections, so that the developer knows, and so that Roads and Bridges then knows that there's an inspections process that would therefore take place.
I do have a question. Mr. Root, looking back at the older deeds and plats, does all the deeds and plats have this, or the plats have this documented on it as of now? Or
All of the private ones sure should, because it was, when it became a pretty big problem not too long after I started there. Not, I say problem, there were just issues with subdivisions that there was a question whether or not they were really built to the public road standards, and folks were saying, hey, they were, or they're stranded HOAs. And they never got notice of the fact that these weren't built to public standards. So that's when that language got incorporated, and it's been helpful and necessary. I don't know if that's the essence of your question.
Well, my concern is, I'm sure there's some older plats out there that does not have this verbiage on there.
Oh, yes, older, yes, absolutely. I'm just saying, since it's been out there, hopefully it's been used all the time. Yes, I agree.
So does it benefit us putting both types of language on here, or just putting this is built to a private road standard on the plats going forward?
Well, on the plats, it should be one or the other. I'm just saying, in the ordinance, it gives that option. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out the benefit of doing one or the other instead of none, if it's built to a private or not to the public road standards, leaving it off and just have it listed as an easement or right-of-way.
Yeah, that was, I guess, what I was going to. The heart of it was because it kept coming up with either folks in subdivisions saying, hey, we didn't know that we could never get these to be public, that they weren't built to be public, et cetera, or developers saying, hey, we're trying to we told everybody we're trying to make these public, it's on y'all. So this was a remedy for those 2 situations. So I think those speak to your question, and then, whether you think those are adequate or good reasons or not, of course, that's a policy decision for y'all and county council. But that was a reason it was put on there. But you're correct. It has not been through the course of any long period of time. I would say, I guess it's probably 10 years.
I will say from a real estate standpoint that most closings, not all, but most closings nowadays, the closing attorney will slide over either a plat or a survey that they are initialing off on. And in doing so, it's one more layer of telling the consumer, you're buying something that this is the way it's accessed as private.
So it's a good notification.
I think it's a good notification, one extra layer that just for the consumer to be aware of.
All right. So I make a motion to include this on section 26-2B12, 26-2, I think that's C10. We need to correct that. It's a good thing I'm not administrative assistant. And section 32, 223C.
Let me say something real quick for Elise. I had made a motion, there was no second on it, so it stopped the conversation, and then he has made a motion. I will second his motion. It's just for our information, keep it straight. Is there any additional discussion on that part? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Unanimous?
Perfect.
With that being said, we had modified that document about the road right-of-ways. We changed the verbiage within it where it said were not. So I make a motion, return it back to its original state.
Where we had taken that out or something?
We had added to it,
Okay.
trying to make it so it include both types.
Is that showing up somewhere? Let's see, it'd be 26.
Actually, if you go to chapter 32, it's not showing up there. I've got the original language there. So never mind, I rescind my motion.
Okay.
All right. So I had a question on section 32, dash 22 under definitions. That is page. Somebody find a page number, holler it out.
Are we looking for half road?
Yeah, I have to. Yes, so it's page 424.
It's in blue, look.
I know I should have done the white like I stole.
Mine says 4 of 4.
424.
Okay.
Did you find it?
Yep. Half road means road located at.
Yeah, that.
It's right under
definition-
full pond level.
Correct. That definition did not make sense to me. Am I missing something?
I don't know if I could read it, I'd
Look,
I don't know if that question was directed to me or not, but I'll put 2 cents in since I looked it up. I didn't find it used anywhere else. So I don't know whether the definition makes a whole lot of sense, and I'm with you.
Well, it looks like the words are mixed up.
Yeah,
Half
but
road means a
half
road.
road is not used as a term in the code. Otherwise, I think it may have had some relevance or meaning in prior iterations. So my recommendation that I just had that was just to delete it.
Okay. So I make a motion to delete that definition.
Second.
If everybody understands what we're seeing here, we can look at the screens. And all those in favor of deleting the half roads definition, signify by saying aye.
Unanimous? Was the second Mr. Nix?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to streets under definitions. We still never have put this to bed, because throughout the ordinances, street is used for both private and public. And as it stands right now, it says see public roads. So I'm not sure how we want to address this.
Okay, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
we brought this up, I remember last time, and I looked at the definitions and number of contexts, and it is, even outside of planning, generally is referring to a public thoroughfare, generally referring to one that has buildings on the sides and things that are not too often the case in Oconee County, but also street is used ubiquitously throughout the code. Sometimes, I think rightly referring to a public road, sometimes not. My thinking was to adopt a definition or move to a definition along these lines. Street means a public, parenthetical, unless the context clearly indicates otherwise, in parentheses, thoroughfare, including the full width of the right-of-way, therefore. not saying it has to be, but I'll repeat it, just something along that line. So we're covering both without, kind of ripping the code all apart. Street means a public, unless the context clearly indicates otherwise, thoroughfare, including the full width of the right-of-way, therefore, without the E at the end. You know what I mean?
And typically street, because I looked it up and it looked like it was all public thoroughfare stuff, the street include the street and the curbing and the sidewalk and everything it looked like. So that would
Correct.
make sense, that it includes the right-of-way.
I make a motion that we adopt Mr. Root's proposal for
Recommendation.
definition of street.
Do I hear a second?
Second that.
Mr. Haney seconded that. If everybody understands, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Unanimous?
All right. Next section, Mr. Haney.
Section 32, 220, plat review. Okay, so that's section, or page 15 of 24, or at least on mine. Is it? Okay. There had been some discussion on this, and I know the conversation came up about encroachments, if I remember correctly.
Yes, 32-222, I believe, were the encroachments.
So how can we include the no additional encroachments in this definition so that this is not hung up on being signed off on? Because right now, it contains no new roads. And if I remember correctly from conversation, you said, yeah, but it may need encroachments on it.
Yeah, so 32-222, number 10, is where the SCDOT encroachment comes into play. And I think the question was where in the code of law does that come into
Yes.
play? Mr. Root, do you remember any of that conversation?
I do remember, well, there's a number of different, statutory sources and regulatory sources for the DOT, that they're not going to obviously permit something until it meets their requirements. The whole conditional permitting thing within the subsection 10 is purposed to, just as a customer service thing, hey, before you get too far down the road, get your conditional approval from the DOT, and so we can incorporate that into the plans. So I know that was the issue for the DOT encroachment. I know there was also a discussion about the encroachment policy in general, but I'm not sure if that's where you're going, or just, I know there's also, I'm trying to follow along with what you're wanting to do.
Just dealing with this definition, and what I was thinking about, let's say family farm was divided up between.
Yeah, I think I'm sorry, Mr. Haney, I think that's where I got confused. So I thought you were talking about the family transfers in section 220, or 32-220, but then we moved to the 223, section 10 with the DOT. So you can just frame me up what issue we're talking about.
Oh, yes, I'm on the wrong page, aren't I? Where is that at?
So the 32-220, we were talking about application review, and if I understood it
Yes.
from last conversation, Mr. Haney was saying, on a family farm, if they're simply subdividing it up for family, that it should be a shall rather than a may. And then the conversation came up, but what about if they needed a DOT encroachment? That's where the may might have been applicable.
Gotcha. And that is, in the context of that, I agree. So making it mandatory for family, I'll talk about family in a second, but for a minor one, that caused me some heartburn, just because there may be, hey, this qualifies as a minor due to numerosity, it's 10 or less, but there could be a number of other issues that make it non-qualifying, that the planning department just has to say, hey, this plat doesn't show the right boundary, or any number of things that could just be administrative issues. But with a shell, it's just mandatory. Hey, this is minor, so you have to approve it. So having some discretion makes sense in that. It could be the planning director is hereby authorized to approve minor subdivisions containing new roads after reviewing the final plan. That gives some language. I think it's going to be a lot more meaningful when y'all populate that minor subdivisions reserved that we have now that doesn't have any real particular requirements to it. But speaking to the family transfers, those are covered. Let's get to our definitions. In a separate area. 1 second. Y'all changed the no consideration, but the essence of subdivision of parcels that result from conveyance deeded by parents, essentially in the first tier of lineage to children, grandparents, grandchildren, etc., that do not create roads or drainage easements shall be received as information only and approved administratively by the planning director. So that just means it's automatic.
So
That change be done. That is in, let me get us our section. That's in 32.213F.
So if we leave the word may in there, we were concerned that may gave too much discretion to the planning director to pick and choose who he approved for. But what you're saying is that he still has to follow the rule that you just quoted that said that if it's a family transfer, he still has to do it based on this F.
Yeah, so families are automatic. I think if you want to do minors and make it more automatic, then just tossing in a word, planning director shall approve appropriately submitted minor or family transfer subdivisions. But of course, that goes back to it's a may, because he's going to determine or she's going to determine what appropriately submitted is.
So
But as
it's
to
your
the family transfers,
recommendation.
yeah, separate section, and it does have it as a matter of right.
So, Mr. Chair, I got a question for Mr. Root.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Root, if we plugged in that same stipulation into this 32.220B that you just read off under the family transfer,
Yes, sir.
would that not make it to where if they're not requiring an easement or encroachment, it's a shall and not a may?
In reference to the family transfers?
Yes, make it so the minor and the family transfers read the same.
Yes, it is as far as having a catch language that they meet the standards, that they're appropriate.
Correct.
Yes, that works.
So where was that at under the section 32.213?
NF 24, family transfers.
Did you get F?
10 of 20.
It's right above where the reserved minor subdivision is. Now I'm looking at the code online. I'm not looking at y'all's.
It's
Still same.
213, 7F, I think it is.
32-213 subsection F.
Family transfer.
So if it does not involve the construction or extension of any roads, bridges, drainage structures, or provide access to interior lots, does not involve the creation of any new drainage easements, shall be received as information only and approved administratively by the director. Would that language work in this spot? So that all others have to go through, if they don't meet that guideline, they gotta get those boxes checked off before the, plat could be accepted.
While we're on that subject, page 21 of 35, section 26.7, echo encroachment. So if a family does what we're talking about here, has a family transfer and there's a few extra parcels, but you're not really encroaching upon or any way altering county maintained road or right of way or excavating within it, you wouldn't meet condition echo, correct? So they wouldn't have to have an encroachment permit.
Correct for me as I understand the question, yes, but not.
And that's where I'm trying to go with this, Dave, is on the private roads.
So do we need some language in 26.7 Echo as well that clarifies that, so that people dividing up stuff amongst their family are not having to do encroachment permits because they have extra lots on their drives or whatever, tying into county roads?
Can you repeat all that again? I'm trying to, where are you pulling from? I'm still haven't.
I see here on the
Okay,
head of
it's
the
up here.
encroachment, E1.
Section 32, 213, Foxtrot. You have this,
21 of 35.
you have this situation where you have family transfer,
I got you, Nikki, don't.
which is on page 10 of 24.
Bless you.
It says subdivision of parcels that results from conveyance of parcels deeded by parents and children, does not involve construction or extension of any road, bridge, or drainage structure to provide access to interior lots. Does not involve creation of any new drainage easement, shall be received as information only.
So it's,
If we do that, my question is, under 26.7 Echo, are we requiring people that do that to get encroachment permits now?
that's my concern with this. Because right now,
Well, I guess my question is really to the staff.
I think I'm sorry.
So
I
they're
didn't mean to-
asking if roads and bridges, if you're accessing a county road, is there an encroachment permit that is required right now to access the county road?
Yeah, period, regardless. So I may have misunderstood. It's not gonna, no family transfer is not gonna circumvent the need for encroachment onto a county road. But the family, at least as far as that language goes in the definition, for interior lots, it's not gonna be encroaching inward. There's no new roadways, that kind of infrastructure, so it's gonna be approved administratively. You don't have the complexity, I guess, to get into a deeper dive for the review, so they allow it. But the encroachment permit is only on the county roads, is separate, and if you have a family subdivision, the encroachment, you could have it divided out or administratively approved, and then like, hey, I'm gonna tie into this county road over here. You're still gonna have to get an encroachment permit and then go through that process. It's blind to whether it's a family transfer, big developer, small developer, whatever.
Question is,
Because it's really just a matter of the safety of the county road.
Question is, if you're already tied in and you're adding parcels to the road that's tied into the county road, do you have to redo an encroachment permit?
so if you're adding parcels to the private road that's tied into the county road,
Correct.
okay.
And the answer should be no,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
As long as you haven't exceeded the number allowed under the current status of private drive or private road.
Correct. As long as you stay within the
This is talking about a
confines of
county-maintained
what
road.
defined roads you're on, driving
Yeah.
on.
I would be curious, and this is a good Kyle Reed question, if this kind of attenuated situation ever happens. Because I think the way it reads, this is actual connection to our easements or right of way on county roads. So it doesn't talk about, hey, we've got an interior lot that's not going to connect via another lot or another lot or whatever. Are we going to have to get a new encroachment permit? I don't know how he plays that out. Obviously, it can get to a certain size if you're doing a subdivision, but that's not here in family transfers where you got traffic counts and all of that. I don't think an encroachment permit is required, but I can follow with Kyle Reed on that to ensure.
To go back to your statement, it almost as if under the application review, talking about the 220, the thing that's missing here, it says subdivision containing no new roads. It's really also saying no new roads or no required permits of the county or of the DOT shall be approved.
And that's where I'm trying to get to is, what is the requirement? What are we asking for them? Because right now, not every subdivided minor subdivision or family transfer lot is going to require an encroachment permit. And we're kind of, we're not clearly defining where it's required and where it's not. And that's,
So, Mr. Root, if I understand, and everyone, please correct me if I'm misunderstood this. We originally started out under 32-220 under application review, and we were trying to eliminate the planning director from having too much control of you get this, but you don't, talking to two different people. And therefore putting shall as opposed to may. The first suggestion is that we take the family transfer paragraph and additionally add it over here so that it's clear that if it is a family transfer, that this paragraph of family transfer under F takes precedence and turns it into a shall, even though the statement originally says may. That it may be, but this is what the planning director is going to be reviewing for. And so the first statement was to maybe add that as additional language. Then the question has come up of, it's really about, if that family transfer, if some of those lots that are carved out, they're accessing a county road or a DOT road, they're going to require a permit, and therefore the shall would not apply. So the question is do we leave may in there and then define how the planning director is going to be reviewing the may? Or do we change the structure altogether of 20B, application review? Or do we add language that says that it shall, unless a county road access or a DOT road access is required, permit access is required? Is that a correct?
yes, I think that also will fall into subdivisions too, because if they're gaining their access on a private road, then they have no encroachment onto a state or county road. Did I state that right, Mr. Reed?
Correct. I mean, it really is, in my mind, and I'm certainly may have it wrong. I'm on the lawyer side and not planning side, but in my mind, the encroachment issue, the permit issue is separate and apart from whether or not it contains new roads. I mean, I think the road issue is a complexity issue. It's a road review issue, which of course we're migrating away from, but for private, but that is that aspect. But the encroachment issue is separate. Certainly for a DOT, they're not going to care much about what we say. They're going to require what they require. The county, likewise, for the safety of the traveling public, needs to have an encroachment permit policy so they know who's tying into roads and that they're doing it appropriately. So to attempt to exempt folks from the encroachment policy, I think could be harmful. Yeah.
So it's your advice to leave the may and leave the exempt and let the planning director make that call based on this other criteria of family transfer paragraph?
Yeah, I think the family transfer stands apart, stands alone, and it's solid by itself. If y'all want to tweak it, it's a matter of policy, certainly can be done. And then the may works. I don't think it's ever been a problem, but to make it more, I guess, persuasive or have more bite to it, can be a shall for appropriately submitted, minor exempt ones. So you just have the appropriately submitted. So, and I know it sounds silly, but somebody's going to come up at some point. If it just said shall and it's minor, they won't have a plat that's just hand drawn 10 lots and here I'm rock and rolling. So we need to still have some language to make sure it doesn't just qualify as a minor or exempt, but is actually an appropriate subdivision document.
So back to my original question, I'm not grasping this. The encroachment is only for county-maintained roads and state-maintained roads. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. So this encroachment permit process is only for county-maintained roads and state-maintained roads.
Correct. I mean, I'm sure there's an encroachment policy for HOAs within their subdivision. I mean, everyone who owns a road wants to have some safety over it. But yes, for purposes of now, it's for public roads encroachment with the DOT, and then what we talked about conditional acceptance in the county encroachment policy, yes.
Right, so here's where I'm going. So let's say you got, well, let's go back to what Mr. Markovich was stating. You have some 5-acre lots in a row on this private road, and the owner decides he wants to divide that lot into 2.5 acres. Both lots have access to that private road. The private road is owned by the landowners. The lot lines go to the center line of the road. So therefore, there will be no encroachment needed via the landowners because they own access to the road. In that situation, would this not be a shall and not a may?
It should. The question becomes is what if some of the lots access that way, but when they carve them up, some of the lots are going to be better accessed straight off of another county road?
But see, that would require an encroachment permit, and therefore, that's what I'm trying to get to on the definition, is if there's no encroachment permit required, then it should be a shall.
So you're wanting to add that language then under the application review,
Correct.
is that if there's no encroachment permit required?
Something to that, and I'm wanting to capture, what would give you the ability to have the plat approved without any other requirements, in this document. And that's, before it said may, but what was may? I mean, it was very vague.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to define here is, okay, the shall is if you meet these conditions. If you don't meet these conditions, then you may get approved if you meet the other conditions.
So, Mr. Root, if we added the words we're still under 32-220B, application review, it says, it gives some criteria, shall be approved, if it contains no new roads. If we added no new, encroachment permits, or no new encroachment, I guess no new encroachment. Is that what you were saying, no new encroachment?
Applications, permits, whatever.
No new encroachment applications or no new encroachment permits, could that be added to that statement and then it be a shall?
Okay, I'm not sure the desire to make it a shall. I understand not wanting to have discretion with somebody, clogging up the works, but somebody submits something that has incorrect acreage. Hey, I'm claiming it could be any number of things. They've got a minor subdivision or family subdivision that shows 1 acre surveys, quote surveys. They're really 2 acres. The setbacks are incorrect. The alignments and the existing right-of-ways are incorrect. There's no topography. There's none of the things that they're going to look for, and I'm sure Elise could say that other things that are involved in plat review are there. So, but they don't require an encroachment. It's a family transfer, so then it's an automatic shall. I think that's problematic.
Which
Yeah.
falls back to the item F in this other section of information.
Yes, if you go back to, what was it, 27F.
It was at page 10 of,
Family transfers.
under family transfers definition. That it may, under this and family transfer,
So what you're stating is family transfer is exempt, but you named off some conditions where they should not be exempt if the setbacks are not correct. Is that?
I'm saying the survey, it's not a matter of being exempt or not. It's just, it's a matter of the survey actually is what it says it is. It's just a matter of accuracy. And I'm looking at administrative, cleanness more than anything. So that's why if you want to use shall, please, do shall.
Well, so you just touched on some key points. So we also need to have in there, if we're going to use shall, those are the items that I'm talking about that needs to be called out. That the setbacks are correct, that the, what was the other thing you had mentioned, Mr. Root?
I was just talking about acreage. I was just reading off the plat requirements, really, the things that the planning department looks for. And I don't know what are the common offenders, what things that they may miss.
Where's
unless
the,
this is ever an issue that comes up and is problematic for them.
right, so where's the plat requirements? You talking about off this, 30?
I started reading off 221, 222, 223. I was just scanning down those.
So,
And Elise, if you've got any experience with things that come up with smaller subdivisions and plats, that would be helpful.
yes,
The only thing that I would say is, kind of going back to what you, mentioned about having a private road, private drive, however you wanna classify it, right? And then you have, like, Mr. Johnson was saying, maybe better access, say it's a corner lot, you have a state or a county road, and then private, if it's better accessed here or here on either side, you know, and sometimes they want the access off of, some people, they want that access off of a county or a state road versus, you know, the private.
well, that's a very good example, and this is the thing that I'm struggling with here. Let's say I do have decided to subdivide a piece of property that had, on a corner lot, that had both state and private drive access. If I'm not wanting to put a road in, should I have to have an easement? And the answer should be no, because if I own to the center line of the private road, I'm not landlocked.
So it depends, right? If it's a new parcel, how many lots or dwellings are already using that private road to access their property? That's a question, and then, you know, then it goes from there as far as, if there's already 3 dwellings using that private drive or it would be private drive,
Driveway, right?
Driveway.
yeah,
Driveway.
private driveway, yeah. And they want to access their dwelling off of that private driveway, it would have to be upgraded to a private drive, meaning they would have to establish the right of way, make sure the driving surface, you know, bring it to a private drive standard. And if the goal is to, you know, another scenario, right? It's a private drive and they're wanting to add an 11th dwelling off of that private drive, then they would have to upgrade it to the private road standard.
And that brings up a very good point that we need to address tonight. But let's go back to that first scenario. Technically, the guy on the corner lot, if he wanted to use that road and he did not have access and it was a private driveway, would he not just have to widen his road to his property line to 20 foot?
I've seen it done both ways, where they have to do the entire road, or they have to do it up to, I've seen it done both ways, so.
If it's accessing a state road and you're widening, I think that the state's
Yes.
gonna come back and say, okay, here's your stopping distance, here's your speed limit, here's your view lane.
That was the other thing I was gonna add to that. Anytime you upgrade from
You
a
have to do
driveway to, you have to increase your encroachment from county or state.
Okay.
I'm inclined to keep it May. The problem, Mr. Root, with the May is that we've been through how many planning directors? And it's not that one planning director, while he's sitting in that seat, is gonna be consistent across the board. But when another planning director comes in, what does May mean to that new planning director? And that's where the inconsistencies we've seen pop up, and where we are trying to nail down, this is what the planning director, the rules the planning director is gonna follow. And if it's a family transfer, they should follow certain rules, and they should then approve it. If they're, with the exception that, we'll use the corner lot, you've got 10, but what if you want to add the 11th? If you get the first guy on the block to access the county road, then there's now just still 10. And so they can get that 11th. But if we're saying that now it's a family transfer, so you shall approve it, but now it's really 11, but you're gonna try to get this other one off to the side, that's where the planning director may need a little discretion to be able to say, okay, you can have 11 lots there, because you got 11 kids. Because you're, as long as you get an easement or an encroachment from the DOT for the first lot 1. And that's where the may would come in.
So the only reason, and that really goes into what Mr. Markovich was talking about, with the drives being at 20 feet now, and the, private drives at 20 feet, and the private roads being at 32 feet, you run into this situation, on these roads, to where you really are binding the hands in this analogy that was given of the landowners, to where they're going to have to give up additional roadway. And the question is, why are we giving up that additional roadway? Because if we fall back to what the fire marshal's requiring, or the International Fire Code, you know, if there's no fire hydrants there, it's 20 feet. I think that's something that needs to be looked at, but right now, for the application review, I think it should be clear. What puts you in a position to have your application approved? If we've got to come up with the verbiage that calls out, you've got to complete section 32, 221, 220, whatever it takes, that needs to be in here so we understand it clearly. So there's no question in the person's mind that's turning in this document, whether it's going to be approved or not, or whether he's going to have to figure out what exactly does the planning director want. He should know up front, and that's what I'm looking for.
Do we need to take this back to committee,
I think
this piece?
I think Mr. Root probably has a good idea of how to word it so that it would include all the verbiage needed, so that you get a clean approval that will not create an issue for the planning department.
If I may, real quick, I want to make sure that we're looking at the bigger picture here, because these key points of discussion is great that we're looking at this one item. But if you actually go back to section 32, 220, this is simply an overview of what is going to be required, an A, B, C, D, and E, or an A, B, C, and D. Those are the things that are required, and application review is required. But then it goes to 221, 222, 22, that are actually the things that then the rules that you need to follow. So this is just the, what do you call it in the book when you're looking at the chapters? This is just a chapter, a what? Index?
Executive summary.
Your executive summary index? So maybe
Index, yeah.
maybe instead of saying under B and then doing all these other things are actually mentioned in other places. That right now we're just,
Can I make a suggestion or add to what you're saying? So my thought is exactly where you're going with this, is this section 220, 32, 220 is letting you know for section B, application review, who does the approval. Not the requirements to obtain approval, and not requiring that the approval be done if you meet family transfer, the definition of family transfers, or the definition of minor subdivisions. So, in my mind, I think we could take out may and shall, and just say, the planning director approves minor or family transfer subdivision containing no new roads after reviewing the plan, final plan.
I like it.
I think that's a great suggestion, Mr. Root. Did you hear that? And is there any objection to that?
Yeah, no, I like it too.
You want to make that as a motion?
I'll make a motion to remove may and shall and add an S to approve, and make it say approves. So the total reading would be the planning director approves a minor or family transfer subdivision containing no new roads after reviewing the final plan.
I'll second that.
I like that, and again, this section is just a general to say, here's the process that you're going through, and then look at all the other chapters to see the details of what that means. I like it, at removing those two. Any discussion, further discussion on that? All those in favor of that signify by saying aye.
Unanimous?
Wonderful.
Six, seven. So next thing is regulating the use of county roads, section 26-7. Yeah, 1935.
So I saw this in here, the stuff about Pickens County, but if we actually go to the content, your stuff in blue is just, adding a bunch of or the designee.
Yes, that's probably why I put this in here.
So we can kind of move from the key points of discussion, it looks like, unless there was something about Pickens that was important.
Yes, there is, but that's, I wanted to take care of this issue about the county engineer or designee. It's throughout this document. We do not have a county engineer. And, in some places it had or his designee.
Mr. Root, do you see any, I don't know if you're seeing what we're seeing, do you see any issue with where we had in the context originally just county engineer, but there's not one, adding or the designee?
No, and I do like that, and I was glad to see the blue. Just for the record, we do have an on-call county engineer, but obviously this is probably referring to in-house all the time, public works engineer. Nonetheless, I think it's a good add, yes.
And that looks to be added in many sections. Would somebody like to make a motion that we, from everywhere in the back materials, that designee be added?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Second.
And so everywhere where it is in blue that says or the designee, we're gonna add that language. Any discussion on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Unanimous?
All right, so if we can turn, I think it's one page back.
So 26 dash,
That'd be 25-5B,
On page 18 of 35, is that where you're at?
18 to 35 at the top. Whoops, went too far.
Oh, sorry.
Yep, right there.
Okay.
I want to discuss this case-by-case basis. Why would we do that on case-by-case basis?
I don't think we should.
Well, I think the intent was if there was already a study done recently that they could use that. Because they're talking about average daily trips.
So you want a more specific condition put in here,
Correct. We shouldn't be.
case by case, which is general.
Yeah, we shouldn't be using a study that's 10 years old if we had a huge population spike for average daily trips.
I guess that allows, the case-by-case basis is allowing the planning director or engineer to determine the extent of the study based on the recency of the previous studies, right?
Correct.
Or, and I may be wrong,
Recency or.
impact on existing road systems, you've got speed limits of the road systems, you've got the existing road of the width of that existing road, the right-of-way of that existing road, the curvature of that existing road, how many additional homes might be in the curves of that existing road, so there, and staff might be able to answer that better, but maybe that's why case-by-case basis, because they're taking the picture of everything overall and saying, hey, based on what new stuff is there, you do need it. But based on the fact that it's in an area where it hasn't changed in the last 20 years, what you had there before was okay.
So instead of saying, the extent of the study shall be determined by county engineer designee on a case-by-case basis, you could just say, the extent of the study shall be determined by the county engineer designee based on, changes in,
Based on current need or current
based on, lost my
Conditions?
thought on it.
How about just saying it shall be determined by the county engineer or designee? Just leave it at that.
I will say the
Case by case.
case-by-case basis, typically, if it has anything to do with the traffic study, one is gonna be if it's required. It's not necessarily a case, in my experience, I have never seen or heard of a situation where it's like, oh, no, it's okay, you don't need, like, it's always,
And that's what I'm fearful of is, we should, and this is what was looking at doing with this document, is shoring it up so that there's always fair play at hand. And I know that sounds bad, but it's something that we should look at. And on a case-by-case basis, it has the potential to allow for that if we
The end of
don't.
the study shall be determined by the county engineer designee based on, changes that have occurred since the last traffic study was done.
I think you're hitting on something there. We just need to
Tweak it a little bit.
tweak it.
Alright.
Is it 8:00?
It's
No.
7, a little after 7. Is that something, Mr. Root, that, based on what we're saying, is that something that you feel like you could take the lead on from here, or is that something that we still need to refine more?
I can tweak it more, but just for clarification, if we go up a little bit, if it's 10 dwelling units, the developer shall submit a traffic impact study. So it's not that part is yes or no, on or off. Then this is just the extent. And the extent is going to be specific to this particular project. So the prior projects they'll have some bearing for the experience of the person who's making the, determination of extent, but it doesn't necessarily determine what this is going to be, the lay of the land and the nature of the new development, the nature of the road that's going to be used to get to the development. All of that goes into play when the engineer or the designee determines the extent of the study. So I think case-by-case basis is good, but better wording can be arrived at. Yes, I can do that, but I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing, because the traffic impact study will happen for a development of 10 or more units.
So, and this is a question for the staff, how do you determine what the extent is?
I don't think she's ever over there. To be fair, it's not the right staff to ask.
Okay.
Kyle Reed would be the one to ask.
I think I'm like Joe, just delete on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
The engineer is gonna determine the extent anyway.
So your motion is?
Remove on a case-by-case basis.
On a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
You're gonna make that motion?
I'll second.
Are we doing anything wrong by approving that? I asked you that question before, and you said you liked it, but Mr. Rude, is there any reason that it legally needs to be there?
No, I agree. This is good wording. Just remove on a case-by-case basis, designee, period. Yes.
All those in favor, is there any more discussion? All those in favor of removing case-by-case basis signify by saying aye.
Unanimous?
All right.
While you're looking through that, Mr. Haney, there were a couple things that I noticed in here that just need to be cleaned up real quick. In chapter 32, under, I've got page 8 here, it may not be page 8. We have one area that says South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Controls. We need to change that one to South Carolina DES like all the others. It's in definitions, below subdivision, actually in traditional septic systems under definitions, in Ts.
Page 7 of
32
24.
definitions under T, traditional septic system.
7 of 24.
7 of 24.
7 of 24.
Very bottom line. Or
It just, we had changed all the others, that was just one in there.
Yeah, you have changes to the current name.
I don't see it here, but I do see it
Oh,
everywhere else. We're
sorry.
just, so I'm gonna make a motion that we change that to SCDES like all the others, and remove Department of Health and Environmental Control. Do I hear a second for that motion?
Second that.
Mr. Fowler seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Can
sir.
we take a 5-minute break?
Yes. He's got a motion. I'll second that motion for a 5-minute break. That will return us at, we'll say 7:18. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
ahead. You're good.
All right, bring the meeting back to order here. Mr. Haney, we were going through these last few. While you're still looking at that, we need to make a couple of announcements. One, Mr. Root said that he had another commitment, if I understand, starting at 7:30. So we want to kind of, anything that needs to be handled there with him as far as questions, we need to do that.
And I do, just to jump in there, it's a personal commitment, not that those are less important. So, but I do have some margin, but not a
We
whole.
very much appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
I've got one other thing that's a clerical thing that goes to show why we were moving stuff around and needed to do this. If you'll look at page 7 of 35, the Collector Road has a right-of-way of 66 feet on page 7 of 35. Collector Road, right-of-way of 66 feet. If you go to page 8 of 35 in the graph, it shows Collector Road of a 50-foot right-of-way. On the next page, Collector Road, 50-foot. So I'm not sure which one it is, if it's 66 feet or 50 feet. This is when we brought over the information from 32 into 26 to show again the discrepancies between those two chapters. I'd like to make a motion for staff to ask Roads and Bridges which one of these it actually is, and to put that appropriate number in there,
Both locations.
in both locations.
I'll second that motion.
Unless there's discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Unanimous?
That was all I had.
All right. So this moves into the area that Mr. Nix had spoke about during the last meeting, dealing with encroachments. This is Pickens County portion of the encroachments that they have on the key points of discussion.
And would this be an area that we would be adding content to our stuff?
This, yes. Let me find it here.
So we don't have that markup.
We do not. This is just a discussion point, so we can mark something up. I figure we could brainstorm for the next 10 minutes. And,
Is there anything that Mr. Root needs to do
Where are you making that?
before we?
What page is that? Oh, you're at the beginning.
So before we get to that discussion, I think that we are through chapter 32 and chapter 26 based on the information that Mr. Haney had provided. I think we've gone through all of those changes. I'd like to make a motion that we hand this over to Mr. Root for final draft of those pieces, not to forward, but to go ahead and get us something that we're not continuing to look at red and yellow and green and blue now, that Mr. Root can actually come back and say, here's what you all have done so far. Everything is now in place. Is that,
you want to do
rather
that?
than Mr. Haney having to bring those things each time to forward, that we can now turn everything into either a yellow addition or a red letter mark through, however that typically goes to council. And we no more have any more blue in here on any of this existing content, blue or green or otherwise, unless there is new information, but I think we've made it through both chapters.
Did we address on page 19 of 35, section 26-6, item numbers 4 and 5?
No, we did not.
What section was that again in page 19 of 35?
1930.
Section 26-6, items 4 and 5. highlighted in blue.
So if I understand, the stuff in blue is stuff that is not currently in there, is that right, Mr. Haney?
No, it was key points of discussion. I don't know why that's highlighted in blue, to tell you the truth. Because it reads well. I think
The
we're going,
additions, changes, or were they already there?
they were already there. I think,
You did add the or designee, right?
or designee was added. I don't know.
Nothing else?
I don't know how all the other,
So it may be,
I was gonna say it might be.
There are
by
several
mistake.
places in there that or designee should be added.
yeah.
yeah. And that might be what I was trying to catch. I don't know. I think you need to fire me as your administrative assistant. I don't think that's a discussion item, other than we've already discussed changing or designee.
I'd like to make a motion that staff compare items 4 and 5 to the existing chapters 26, so that the only change that we're doing is the or designee. And if those two, if this highlighted in blue is not the same, if you would bring that to our attention at the next meeting. But if it is, then the or designee should be changed with the previous motion.
Second
That's
that
my
motion.
Second that motion. If everybody understands, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Unanimous.
So that then should conclude, and I don't know if I'd made a motion on that other before or not,
I don't think so.
but I would like to try to, there's so many colors in this thing, and I think we're to a point of getting this to Mr. Root, unless I'm mistaken.
You have a motion?
So I wanted to, I guess, make the motion that all this work that you've done, that we put it in Mr. Root's hands to clean up of all of the votes that have been done and prepare a document that would otherwise go to council, that would come back to us to include with anything that we're about to further discuss with this Pickens thing.
Can I amend that motion?
Absolutely.
With this document cleaned up, can we do a comparison document with the existing ordinances? I think Word has that ability to show you what has been changed. So we can have that in front of us to compare the two and see exactly where the changes were at from one document to the original.
How do you do that typically, Mr. Root, as far as when you're making changes to an ordinance? To present
Either
to
way,
council?
either with track changes or the compare function that Mr. Haney talked about, but that is the way I'll customarily do it. We'll have an exhibit A, which is a clean copy, everything as if it's approved and going to be codified. And then there'll be a red line version that shows delete and additions as an exhibit B.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
we had a first, was there a second? Did somebody second that motion?
I'll second that.
So all those in favor of,
I would like one quick piece of discussion on that.
sure,
So the only thing that we're looking at continuing work on then is the encroachment section in 26.
correct. Unless there's any new additional information that we need to bring forward, but I'd like to try to get it as clean as possible, so now we're just dealing with a few paragraphs here to there.
I think after what Mr. Markovich had stated, we need to go back and look at the road width on private roads and drives. Because it does create an issue.
That's why I'm raising this question. What else is out there?
So do we try to, so the question becomes, I was trying to take off of your plate to continue to recreate these drafts, is to try to get staff to get this draft to where we are, what we've all agreed to thus far. And then if there's any additional tweaking, we're then looking at clean information. So how do we best do that? Do we ask Mr. Root to do it, or do we ask, I hate to ask Ms. Dunaway to to add something to her plate.
I think it may be premature to ask them to draft up stuff. We still got some pretty
Okay.
big changes we got to work on. We got
Okay.
this issue Mickey brought up, and we got the encroachment section that we want to try to
Try to deal with. All right,
benchmark Pickens County on and see if we can make some improvements on it.
I will withdraw my motion then.
Well, we've got,
I could, Mr. Chairman, and I'm not sure which direction the conversation's going, but I would advocate for y'all at some point in the encroachment discussion, bringing Kyle in, Kyle Reed. I mean, I know this is one of the issues he deals with very, very frequently, so he'll know, you know, what the issues are, the problems are, what they have to cover on the ground and do, not daily, but pretty close to daily.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything that you all feel like that we need Mr. Root for at this point?
just one quick question before you get off there, Mr. Reed. Do you
Yes, sir.
see any issues with going with the 20-foot easement or roadway or right-of-way on the private drives and private roads?
I defer to, again, Kyle Reed and the emergency services folks. I think y'all had that discussion and it got narrowed down to a policy question. And I didn't have a dog in that hunt, so to speak.
Okay. So it's,
Are we through with Mr. Root?
yes.
Mr. Root, thank you so much for being on the line and helping us through this process. We will let you sign off here.
All right. I sure appreciate y'all being mindful of my time, and we'll look forward to the motion when it comes and get a final version for y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.
Bye.
Mr. Haney?
I've got a point of order.
Yes, sir.
So, these two topics of discussion, I don't think we're prepared to discuss them tonight, because we don't have the right subject matter experts here, for one. And another, I'd like to have at least, either we have the Pickens County piece of the encroachment ordinance in front of us, along with the Oconee County, and we compare, or we have a proposed modification package in front of us using benchmark information from the Pickens County ordinance to modify the Oconee County ordinance. Neither of which we have.
Neither, and I wasn't gonna say we necessarily have the discussion, but I would like to create an outline for our next meeting so that we know how that agenda should look.
Well, I think my thoughts are, we've got the 20-foot right-of-way discussion piece, and we need to have Kyle Reed, and we need to make that an agenda item on its own. And then that will help us decide what direction we want to take the ordinance. And then a separate agenda item for the encroachment piece and the benchmark Pickens County.
Well, we do have the Pickens County encroachment permit piece here under key discussion points. I do agree that we should table it to the next meeting and go through it, but it is attached as your document. 4 is the 20-foot right-of-way. We've hashed this out with Kyle Reed, the Roads and Bridge Department, and the Fire Marshal and Fire Chief in meetings back in, I don't know, May, April.
We've discussed it numerous times. It was not a meeting I had attended. I was out of town the week that was done, but there was a decision made on drives for the right-of-way to drop to 20 feet and on private roads to drop to 32 feet at
And-
the time.
Just to show where I'm going, so in there, we put in the verbiage to include the drainage on the 20-foot right-of-way roadway. So I'm just wondering, what are we gonna gain by going back through that? I agree we need to bring Kyle in for the encroachments permit section, but what are we gonna gain by going through all that other again?
It's already been voted on unless you all want to bring that back up. Those two items have been voted. It sounds like that to bring it back up means to eliminate it altogether. And again, I wasn't at the meeting, but it seemed like the 32 feet was a settlement kind of
And that's the problem.
based on fire marshal and,
Well, that's the problem I have. It was more of a feel-good settlement versus this is what's required. And that's the decision that we gotta make. So I'm fine with going back through that again. I just think we're just gonna rehash some of the old things.
Which I really am not a fan of putting Kyle or the fire marshal through something that we've had him up here 3 times to do in the past. Unless the
I think
objective
they
is to
acknowledge-
eliminate it.
I think they acknowledge that 20 feet was the code requirement, the minimum requirement, but I think they also, I think their message was clear to us that that doesn't necessarily mean that it was a safe and effective thing for them. I think that's the reason we settled on the 32,
That was the message I heard.
was because they didn't feel like the 20 was safe and effective for them necessarily
On a road,
on a
Well,
road.
on a road.
But the,
Private road.
and it also wasn't convenient because they can't turn around, so.
The 20-foot is all that they're gonna be driving on, and this is what went through. The additional road width, if I recall correctly, was just something they were wanting, especially after we got into conversation about the sight lane being able to have items in that area. Then it's no longer necessarily a requirement. We gotta remember, on private roads, these are agreements between private property owners. And on those roads, they're not patrolled by the sheriff's department unless requested by the private property owners to do such. So the 20-foot is the bare minimum that we should take in order to ensure that they'd be able to be insured. So the fire marshal will not have any issues with any types of buildings on that private roadway. Anything above that, to me, is partial takings. And that's, we could hash back through that discussion again, but that's where we're getting down to, is the International Fire Code deals strictly with public roads. And, we're creating a situation where if you do want to build that 11th house, and then you're on the back side of that property, you may not be able to build it on that private road. Because it's only 20 foot wide.
This was a discussion y'all had while I was not here, so my question is from an agenda standpoint for the next meeting, is this something that you all feel like needs to be brought back up for discussion again, or do we have this to say we are completely eliminating the difference between drives and roads? Or is this something that you all feel like that was discussed enough to where for now we're gonna keep it as drives and roads and we're not going to be discussing it? Because if we reduce both of them down to 20, then it would be making everything the same. Anything above a driveway then becomes the same. And again, you all had those discussions prior to, and so I don't want to try to influence one way or another on all of that. My question is from an agenda standpoint, are we going to say, let's talk about easements and be done? Or are we going to talk about easements and these private roads and drives?
Well, I'll tell you what, one way to determine that would be me making a motion to change private roads to the 20-foot width and have the verbiage the same as in private drives. And if nobody wants to second
Do I
that,
hear
we
a
know it's
second
discussion.
on that?
So
I'll second it. We'll see where it goes.
I'm going to abstain from voting and abstain from discussion on that item of eliminating roads.
So basically,
I
what
know
I'm
we
looking,
sure talked a lot about this and worked really hard on it. And now we're changing our mind, so.
well, I think it's important that we understand, and as we recall, the whole reason it was 50 foot was because of a compromise.
Sure.
And here we are, once again, compromising, instead of doing the bare minimum and ensuring that we're not doing any partial takings from the people. That's the problem I have, and basically what I'm just requesting is,
I remember a lot of people, well, a lot of people probably didn't agree with us, but there were a lot of people came in here and said there are safety issues with reducing things down to 20 feet.
but we have things.
And we had staff arguing that case along with the public.
And I agree with that, but if we're gonna say that it's a safety issue, then we have many, many county roads here in Oconee County that is way under that minimum,
I agree.
that is just
And we can't
prescriptive
grandfather
easement.
them.
And just prescriptive easement. So is it truly a safety issue, or is it a talking point? I mean, if we look at what would benefit the people.
We've been over this too.
Yeah, if we look at what it would benefit the people, it's establishing the bare minimum so that they can have fire insurance fire insurance and fire emergency response. And that's called out in the International Fire Code.
I'm willing to hear all those arguments again from both sides, but.
So your motion is to,
Do what?
so you want me to go through,
Well, I seconded your motion, so,
okay.
I mean, we're in discussion now, so.
Is there more discussion?
We've got new people here too, so we can,
Yeah, that's true.
we've got Joe and we've got,
Jake?
Jake, yeah.
Sorry.
After 7:30, I can't be held accountable for it.
And it's past 7:30.
So there's a motion on the floor to talk about, to go back through private roads, private drives.
No, the motion on the floor was to remove the 32 feet,
Remove
which
the
is,
32 feet.
which is item
Was it
2.
Down to 20 feet?
If you just remove item 2 altogether, it takes care of it.
Yeah, it goes to 20 feet.
Yeah. So that's,
But then that basically
section
eliminates
26.
the differences between private drives and private roads. And
That's
they bundle into one.
Correct.
And now the county doesn't care
Well, they don't care
about the
anyway.
difference.
Well, with the exception of the residences.
They don't care anyway.
Well, the division of number of residences now meshes together too. So
As they should. It's agreements between private property owners.
All right.
It's a whole lot more complicated when you got 100 of them than it does when you got 10 of them.
It does.
I thought while I was going through here, we made private driveways, private roads. We were determining right-of-ways for each. That way, there's no landlocking, you know, you can't have a driveway, or can't have a private road, but you can't have a driveway, because you only got to so much land, you know?
Hey, I'm fine with, like I say, Mr. Marcingill and Mr. Frable. Now, they've got 2 new people. Let's rehash it again.
So the motion is to, in fact, put it on the agenda.
Sure.
To rehash.
So I rescind my motion. Your motion is to put it on the agenda
Your motion was actually to just eliminate it right here, right now.
right now, because we've been through this discussion, but he did bring us some good points, as we have 2 new individuals here that did not hear that debate.
Right.
And, in discussion, so therefore, let's give them the ability to go through that. That means I might have to go back to the International Fire Codes and dig up all that information.
What's the same stuff you had last time?
I'm gonna ask, this sounds like 2 meetings as opposed to 1 meeting.
I think we could do it both in the same meeting, because we're gonna have the same actors here.
Okay. Okay,
I wasn't pointing at you, I was just saying out there.
I see them all.
Yeah.
all right.
I hope the public's listening because there were plenty here last time on that one.
Okay, so
I rescinded my motion to change this.
okay.
He's got a motion to put it on the agenda.
And was there a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any more discussion on that? All those in favor of Mr. Nix's agenda, of putting this back on the agenda, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed,
Motion passes.
and I abstained. All right, we know what the next agenda should be then. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All those in favor?